Hey everyone, I'm Tracy, and welcome to the Season 1 recap for History. History web series is an LGBT dramedy about love, loss, family, and friendships. We have been very fortunate to have received multiple festival selections, awards, currently racking over 50 selections and awards for our various episodes. We have 2 seasons, 6 episodes each episode about a half hour long. So with season 3 ready to premiere on February 14th, I thought I would help you out by doing a little recap of each season. So we did a few little season episode recaps on the social media channels to give you just a quick bite of each episode to remind you of the plots and where we've left everybody and all the characters. But this is going to be more of a review of the season. I'll throw in some clips. But yeah, this is Season 1 of History. Let's start with the production. Season 1 of History started in 2016. The official announcement came in April, and filming happened from April until about June of that year. As I have a job, during the weekends is mostly when we shot all 6 episodes. We filmed by location, not by sequence, and we released the entire season in October of that year. Our lovely poster signed by the cast from our cast party where we launched. This was the first film video project done by Necessary Outlet after I launched. The first project I did was a cabaret, a live show, and after that a little test video of a little dance routine just to work out how to use the camera, how to light, and how to edit. It was really a test all to get into filming Season 1 of History. Season 1 was filmed on a shoestring budget. All of the actors were volunteer. All of the crew were volunteer. Locations were mostly through favors or true guerrilla filmmaking. All of History is filmed on a DSLR camera. At the time, I had 3 fluorescent bulb lighting units and a boom mic, a very cheap boom mic. And that was it. Armed with 6 scripts of half-hour episodes, we jumped in and did our best to tell the story of Jamie and his rebuilding of his life after a breakup. So let's start by diving into episode 1 of season 1, Void.
Winston Churchill is claimed to have said that those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So I've decided to learn.
Episode 1 was featured in multiple film festivals after it premiered. It won the Sir Edmund Hillary Award from the Mountain Film Festival. It also won Best Television Pilot at the Honolulu Film Awards in 2017. And the entire series has won the Best Web Series Awards from our friends at Los Angeles Film Awards, nominated by Acting Hour, chosen as a pick on Starable. Screenplay for episode 6 was a nominee in the Toronto Web Fest. So, and the season got a lot of great accolades, and it all started with episode 1, which I'm actually going to skim through and watch here to give you the highlights of as we go. So the episode opens with Jamie waking up, having a bit of a panic attack. He doesn't understand why yet. He's in a new relationship with a man named Seth. They had met at a party shortly after Jamie's breakup of 5 years. A breakup from a relationship of 5 years with Jared. They'd lived together. He had had to move out. He'd gone through a lot of changes, which we discover throughout the season, but this time we just see him wake up sort of in a panic and tell Seth that he can't continue. We also see a bit of a montage that will mean more at the end of the show, which is when Jamie sees Jared again on the train, which is something that happens in the final episode. Jared, his ex. Let's talk a bit about the cast we've got. So I play Jamie. Bit of behind the scenes fun. Originally, Will Cohen, who plays Will, not intentional, purely coincidental. He was supposed to play Jamie, or he was discussed originally to play Jamie. It was eventually decided that the story was too close to my sort of things that have happened in my life, that the man who plays Ted, Trent Stone, Will Cohen, the original Jared, who was a different actor, and myself in a meeting, in our first production meeting, kind of decided that the role was too personal for anyone other than myself to play it, in that they all volunteered to help with all the behind the scenes stuff, which I had intended on taking on myself. So once that was settled, with myself playing Jamie, we have Will Cohen playing Will, who we meet in the next episode. Andrew Lipson, a really fantastic actor, took on the role of Jared almost at the very end of production. We had to save all of Jared's scenes for the very end, as our original Jared dropped out mid-production. Blessing in disguise, as Andrew is an amazing actor and just a complete sweetheart, has returned for cameos in season 2, maybe season 3. You'll just have to wait and see. We have Bianca Lynn, who originated the role of Bianca. Again, Bianca, Will, complete coincidence. Bianca was a friend of mine who offered to help. Her role since for season 3 has been assumed by Samantha Nixon, who I'm very excited for you to meet. Carissa Fales in seasons 1 and season 2 played the character of Catherine. Bianca and Catherine make up Jamie's sort of legacy friends, pre-breakup friends, people who he was friends with and sort of his best girlfriends in New York before he got into any relationship at all. They're sort of the through line of his relationships, Will being new. Matthew, who we meet in episode 3, played by Jacob Seidman. Fun story about Jacob. Jacob was auditioning for a different role, as the role of Matthew was already filled, but the rehearsals weren't going well. And when Jacob sat down to read for whatever role he was auditioning for, there was just something about him that was like, you would make a really great Matthew. And I pretty much dropped the script on him, the role of Matthew, without any prep, and just said, would you just read through this for me? And he did, and it was magic. He just was Matthew. So had to unfortunately let the other actor go, but all for the better, because Matthew has really turned into a fan favorite character for reasons that are obvious for anyone who's watched the show. And who are we missing? We're missing somebody. Oh, in episode 1, we have our first of an illustrious group of guest stars. We just have really great guest actors in the show as well. And for this episode, we meet Joshua. Scott Mandel played Joshua, the waiter that Jamie meets and begins another new relationship with. So that was a little background, a little production about season 1. So let's really get into Void. So after the little flashback of Jamie having the panic attack, Jamie meets Bianca freshly after moving into his new apartment. We understand that there's been some problems in the move out and the move into the new apartment, that it wasn't seamless, that he had been dealing with a lot of drama and a lot of stress. We understand that he doesn't speak to the ex anymore. He doesn't speak to any of the friends anymore. And this is the first time he's really sat down in the wake of the breakup with anybody, quite bitter. And Bianca notices that, decides not to press. A waiter at the bar, Añejo, shout out to Añejo for letting us film there, great friends of the show. And great restaurant, you should check it out in Hell's Kitchen, New York, if you're there. So Añejo, the waiter, begins hitting on Jamie, which is something new for him. He's not really the type that has received advances. He's been in a relationship for a very long time, so he very inarticulately gets Joshua's number so he can begin dating Joshua. So you're like 20-something. I imagine you know your way around a smartphone?
Sure.
So there is a problem with mine. Your number isn't in it?
Okay, that worked, but you need to know that that was awful, and I'm off tomorrow.
What we see here with the seeds that are planted are that Jamie had just gotten out of some whirlwind romance with Seth, a CrossFit dude who he had been, who lived in Boston, who he met shortly after the breakup, which was not that long ago, and had already had some sort of whirlwind romance with, and it ended in a panic attack of him just realizing, I cannot get into a new relationship right now. While describing that situation to Bianca, Jamie, of course, starts entering into yet another new relationship, now with Joshua. So as the episode moves on, we have Jamie on a date with Joshua that goes from bar to bar to restaurant to bar. Jamie sort of expresses his views on gay relationships. Our relationships aren't held to a standard, right? So we can define them however we want. We choose what makes us happy. And since we're all going to hell anyway, no one gives a shit what we do. Joshua pushes back on whether having an open relationship actually made Jamie happy, and he takes the point. We learn about the relationships between the girls and Jamie, who Catherine has since left town and she is coming back to visit for reasons that we'll discover very soon. And we also get finally a first kiss between Joshua and Jamie, which you really get into Jamie's mental state, which is that he's really at rock bottom. He's completely raw and emotional and just acting and not thinking, and he really wants to have a sexual relationship with Josh. Josh says he doesn't do that unless he is in a relationship with someone. And Jamie is just desperate for intimacy, desperate for connection, and asks if he'll at least just come home and lay next to him.
Would you just want to sleep next to me? I'm sorry, I don't really have any walls right now.
We next see Josh and Jamie already playing house. They are in Jamie's new apartment. They are preparing food for the visiting girls. Jamie's girlfriend besties, who are coming over for a little house party, a little gathering, and we start to see that Jamie and Joshua's relationship, which is very new, weeks old, is already falling into sort of relationship roles, and the boyfriend's preparing, and what we're seeing is that Jamie has pulled Joshua into the role that Jared had filled for 5 years, and he is pretty much serving as a substitute for Jared. When the girls come over and the conversation about, we finally meet Catherine, and the conversation about Jamie's breakup comes up, and the friends and the move out and whatever happened, and we still really aren't quite clear on what happened other than there's been a cutoff in communication, is that Jamie is still very angry, very bitter, very triggered, and goes on. Anytime the subject is touched, he moves on to a diatribe about it, which worries the girls.
And it was me that planned all the parties, all the events, all the meetups. It was always me. Me. In fact, Jared used to say, "Oh, our New York friends, I could take them or leave them." It was me that tried to make us a group. And the second that Jared and I broke up, silence.
And when Jamie finally gets a moment away from the group, we see a quick private conversation between the girls in which we realize that Catherine is not in town for a wedding as she said she is. She is actually very concerned about Jamie, that when the breakup was happening, there was a moment when Jamie burst into tears on the street and laid down in the middle of a busy New York street and bawled his eyes out to Catherine on the phone. After that breakdown, Catherine was triggered to come and take care of Jamie. And we really see, we've yet to see the friendships that develop in the present, the friendships that Jamie had with the people he was friends with while he was with Jared. We've yet to see that, but we start to see the kinds of deep, meaningful relationships that Jamie tries to have, and particularly the ones with the girls, which sort of set the standard of the kinds of friends, the people who will fly across country and swoop in when needed. That those are really the things that he values more than anything. So after that conversation, we flash forward a bit to the end of the party when the girls have left, and you have a little private moment between Jamie and Joshua. Joshua puts on some music as they clean up, and this is really the last point to drive home how unprepared Jamie is to emotionally enter any sort of new relationship, because the words of a sad song have triggered something within him, and he loses it and just starts crying.
So take it all away. Take it. Take it. Take it all away.
Joshua sees it as a moment to step in and increase their intimacy. It ends in physical intimacy, but we're really, as an audience, seeing Jamie not prepared to be in the relationship he seems destined to be headed into. The song that he hears, Take It All Away, here was performed by the actor who, for season 1, played Gio, Rob Maitner, who we'll meet in episode 3. The song, I wrote the song and lyrics along with Clint Edwards, who helped me with the music, and the song is called Take It All Away. The inspiration behind the song was Sarah Bareilles' Manhattan, was the song that inspired the song, and you can listen to it now, link somewhere on the screen right now. You can go ahead and listen to the song in full, a recording that I did of it.
Free of any proof that us two were something I still feel everything with nothing.
We then come upon the next morning. Joshua leaves for work. They make future plans to, again, someone staying over at someone's apartment. Jamie has a phone call with Catherine to talk about what she thought about meeting Joshua, and we start to see that Jamie becomes triggered by the progress of the relationship with Joshua. He sees the things that Joshua is leaving in his apartment. He starts to feel the panic attack. He feels from the conversation he's having with Catherine, and he, like at the beginning of the episode, has another sort of swell of emotions around the speed in which he's barreling through this relationship. We see a flashback, our first real flashback of the show, which goes back to a time when Jamie and Jared were first dating, and Jamie is trying to break things off because he's freshly out of his relationship that he had with David, a character that we meet in season 2. And we see that Jamie has a pattern of jumping full force into a new relationship right after another one ends. He is realizing that he had the same feelings when he got with Jared in the first place. He had at the beginning of the episode with Seth. He's now prepared to be doing the exact same thing with Joshua. And finally, after sort of 3 times of this happening in his life, he realizes that he has to break the cycle.
How can you be so sure?
Because this is what I do. I've slotted you in a spot. Like I slotted Jared in David's too soon after that breakup. Like I tried to slot Seth in Jared's before I even met you. Just trying to fill an empty space so I don't feel the absence anymore. But I need to be okay with that absence before I try to fill it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who's in it. Just so long as it's occupied.
And we're moving on to episode 2. Episode 2, Apartment 8. We finally meet Will, which we'll get to in just a second. We also have some new guest actors. Andrew Holder as Ezra. We also have Mike Longo, who, if you've seen him, if you've seen his Instagram, he is a Broadway performer, was in Beautiful the Musical, also went on as Aladdin, in Aladdin on Broadway. Really, great actor. Very lucky to have him. Playing an unnamed hookup of Jamie's. So those are our new characters for this episode. In Apartment 8, in the wake of Josh, the breakup with Josh, we see Jamie still going forward into the dating scene, but more about playing the field, more about meeting a bunch of different people, going on dates, getting out there, and less about quickly filling the boyfriend role with the first person he meets. So we start off with a little bit of a montage of things to come. We have a little sexy scene of Jamie engaging in some bondage play with who we will learn later to be his regular hookup, who we refer to in the script as Total Top, as that is the handle that he has on whatever app they met on. But when we come to the present, we start with Jamie flicking through his dating app, trying to get up to speed on who he's about to meet. So his first date of the day, of several dates in the same day, is Ezra. Ezra is a fellow attorney, and Jamie seems impressed by his low body weight and visible abdominals, something that we learn, actually we explore a lot in season 3 of Jamie's body issues. But he has the date with Ezra, and we set the scene showing that Jamie still isn't 100% in the mental space to be having any sort of relationship, that anything he talks about is still all about the ex, all about the relationship, constantly triggered. It's the only thing he can still talk about.
The shared friends, you and your ex are not speaking. I'm gonna have to soon, though. We're fighting with the landlord over the lease termination and the rent. That's another long story.
Leading to a mildly unsuccessful date. He leaves that date to meet Will. Will Rosen, main character of History, played by Will Cohen. Will is new to the city. We learn is sort of newly out, having come out later in life, and he seems completely infatuated with Jamie. Jamie, we see a nice parallel of the two dates. The date with Ezra, where Jamie at the end of it felt very engaged and Ezra sort of was lukewarm, flipping it for the Will date, where Will seems very engaged and anxious to meet again, whereas Jamie seems a little more reluctant. One of the great things about that first date with Will and Jamie is we establish their relationship, and we establish that they sort of have the same outlook on love, on relationships, on superficiality, which is something that is a major theme in History, is a major commentary of the entire show, and is something that is very much explored in season 3.
A friend of mine actually said that for real once. He was like, Will, I'm 30 and still single. I don't understand. I'm double Ivy.
Well, there's the fucking problem.
After the fallout of the dates, where it's sort of discovered that Jamie wants Ezra, Ezra doesn't want Jamie, Will wants Jamie, Jamie's kind of lukewarm on Will. As it goes, as all of you know, we get Jamie waking up in the morning to check his messages. We have a screen filled with messages from multiple different apps. He's on the dating apps, he's on the hookup apps, he's getting texts, he's setting up one date for later, the next date the next day, a hookup here, a hookup there, to the point where Jamie is actually keeping a calendar. Very Brett Kavanaugh, isn't it? Keeping calendars. I wonder if one of these people is PJ. He's keeping a Brett Kavanaugh calendar of all of his consensual sexual experiences, all of his dates, all of his hookups. He's really filling his life with dating instead of filling his life with a replacement boyfriend. As he's checking his messages, he gets pinged by a reliable, regular hookup, someone who never has a name, and he comes over and the two of them have relations. One of the things I really love about this particular scene is all of the text messages and how the messaging from different apps have different tenors. You have someone who is interested in setting up a date. You have someone who's looking for X-rated pictures. You have someone who is wondering if he'll accept money to have his feet worshipped. All of these kind of messages that regularly happen on the apps and on dating, it was just really fun to create. These weren't in the script, and so they were fun to create in post-production. We get a quick flashback after the hookup to show how he and Total Top know each other, and we start to see a little more of the relationship with Jared. You know, previously we've only seen the flashback of their almost breakup when they first started dating, and we are now seeing their everyday life, and we're seeing that they had an open relationship where Jamie would go off and have sex with this Total Top guy, and that Jared knew about it. You're left to sort of believe that maybe Jamie's cheating on Jared, but then only to realize that it's an arrangement. The scene closes with Jamie and Jared sleeping facing away from each other in bed, Jamie even putting in music to fall asleep to really show the lack of intimacy between the two of them. We flash forward now to back to the present. We have a second date between Jamie and Will. They decide to have a gym date and can't decide whether this is possibly the broiest or gayest thing either of them has ever done. They eventually run into the hookup, who is a little bit flirtatious and heads off. Jamie feels the need to come clean to Will that this is someone that he hooks up with. Something awkward to say on a date, but Jamie feels the need to be honest, and Will sort of accepts the fact that this happens.
It happens. I barely hook up, but it seems like I run into them all the time. It's really fun when you run into one and his boyfriend. Story of my life.
We see Bianca again. Bianca returns for a little dinner date with Jamie, and they start swapping. He starts telling the stories of his love life and who he's dating. We start to get into Jamie's views of Will, which is that while he really cares about him and actually has a really great time and connection with him, he fears that the two of them do not have sexual compatibility, which is something that led to the breakdown in the relationship between Jamie and Jared, and it was sort of a staple of his relationship with Jared, the outsourcing of sex and sexuality in order to maintain a lifestyle with Jared and not be alone. That is a pattern that he fears that if he were to enter a relationship with Will, where they don't necessarily seem sexually compatible, would be something that repeats. As I have now become proficient in online dating, allow me to impart some advice. Check the height.
Obvi. It was a rookie mistake. Ezra?
No, he friend-zoned me. Like, I must now friend-zone little William.
But like how little?
Just too little to fuck me. It's like a Chihuahua and a Great Dane. It's just wrong. Plus, I want to feel little.
So phase him out.
Well, I actually like him. Like, really like him. Like, a whole lot. I'm hoping we can be bar buddies. We then come to a scene that we actually see again in season 2, as it serves as a really critical moment. It sort of sets the motions of everything that happens in season 2, which is the breakup. Jamie finally friend zones Will because He really enjoys Will's company. He has a great time with him. They feel really connected, and he really just wants a best friend. And because of the concerns about the sexual relationships, he just wants to solidify this relationship early and now before it gets too messy. Will is heartbroken and heads off, and we're not clear on whether they will ever meet again. We start to hit our callback for the episode, something that I work very hard to plant in all of the episodes of history, where we hear from Ezra again. Ezra, the first date that he went on at the beginning of the episode, has done some digging and done some talking and has mentioned Jamie a couple times in his own life. And despite the fact not wanting to really go on a second date or meet him again other than as friends, something that Jamie has now just done to Will, he calls him because it turns out Ezra is recently become friends with Jared. Now, we start to realize, and Jamie starts to become wary of the conversation, because Ezra has decided he's going to volunteer himself to mediate any remaining disputes between the two, which infuriates Jamie, who has decided that he's just going to ignore and cut Jared off, and to have someone he went on a date with sort of surface all of this really leaves a bad taste in his mouth. At the end of the scene is the reveal that sets him off the most, which is the voicemail from Jared that by coincidence is occurring at the same time as this call with Ezra, which Jared refers to the fact that Jamie still owes him he believes that Jamie still owes him some money, and that he's prepared to sue for it, and he has representation. Jamie, putting two and two together from just having the phone call, realizes that Ezra is actually working not as some sort of third-party mediator, but is someone who is representing Jared's interest and was just trying to play him, and it pisses Jamie off. So we flash forward to Jamie in his apartment having a call with Catherine, where he is extremely upset by feeling manipulated and feeling played. His phone is out of juice, so his phone dies. He takes all of that anger, gets a glass of wine, and still not feeling sated, he sits on the ground, and after his phone regains charge, he starts looking for a hookup. And here we get a flashback of Jamie post-move out, post-breakup from Jared, and we see that in a time, so when this episode was filmed, this was a time before prep was sort of regularly available. The time of the episode, I think when the episode premiere, prep was just really becoming a mainstay part of gay life. The flashback was to a time before then, and so it shows that Jamie's need for intimacy in times when he was feeling down, and how that was expressed through sex, would even lead him to behaviors that at the time were quite risky. Not being on prep and having anonymous, unprotected sex. And it was something that he could be convinced into because his need for intimacy was so strong. And we see him take that pitfall in the moments after the move out and the breakup, something we discover more about later in the season, and it's with that very same hookup. But at the end of the episode, in a scene that is referenced very heavily in season 3, Jamie makes the decision not to go on a hookup, but rather to hang out with Will, who is texted to ask if he'd like to hang out that evening. And that instead of treating his sadness with sex, he's going to try something else, and instead goes off to have a night with Will. Moving into episode 3, the halfway point of the season, we've got The Bad Guy. The episode is notable for a brand new cast member. We've got the premiere of Jacob Seidman as Matthew, who I talked about a bit earlier. This is his first episode. We learn more about Seth, the CrossFit guy that Jamie had started a relationship with before Joshua in the first episode. We get the aftermath of what happened between Will and Jamie after the breakup. A lot of plot points in this episode. So the episode starts with a flashback of Jamie and Jared in Texas. So they're stranded, and they've decided that they're going to hook up. In our first full scene, we move forward to couples therapy, where Jamie is discussing his need for sex, and Jared feeling that Jamie's so said promiscuity is getting in the way of their relationship. We also see a very one-sided therapist who seems very much in Jared's corner and very critical of Jamie, which Jamie feels in the moment. In season 3, we actually get a new therapist, Jamie's personal therapist that he's been with since this experience, and we get a reference to the scene. So it's nice to revisit this episode to get the full context of what he talks about, what Jamie talks about in season 3 when he's with his new therapist.
Doesn't everybody need sex?
I'd say everyone desires intimacy, but there are many ways to have intimacy with your partner other than sex. I mean, Jared, would you say that Jamie has always been promiscuous?
Promiscuous?
Yeah.
We finally jump forward a bit more to yet another flashback, just further in time. This is a pride party that Jamie went to right after the breakup with Jared. He meets Seth. So we finally meet Seth fully, the person he had the whirlwind relationship with right after Jared. And we also meet Matthew. So we see that Jamie is flirting with this guy, and they're having a fine conversation, but they're not really having much in common. Matthew decides to interject himself that that Jamie should spend his time with Matthew instead, and pretty much calls Jamie out quite bluntly for making friends through sex. We also see Jamie meet Gio in season 1, played by Rob Maitner, someone that he does have a lot of connection with, someone he does have a lot in common with, and we see him later in the episode really getting along well with, and it's really showing Jamie's high value placed on sexual chemistry and sexual relationships between men, and not his purely platonic, friendship. We see a bad relationship. The party is being hosted by Brian and Andrew, who Brian is very clearly flirting with someone else who is not Andrew. It seems from the people there that this is a regular occurrence, and it's something that Jamie finds very distasteful and very triggering. Where everyone else sort of decides it's none of their business, Jamie decides it's very much part of his business. Flash forward finally to our first scene in the present, which leaves off where the last episode left us, which is Will and Jamie going out. They start at a lesbian bar because Jamie likes the music better. Will and Jamie take their first steps towards solidifying a friendship.
So, other boys?
Yeah, you know how it is.
Will, if we're gonna be buddies, we gotta gossip. It's very important.
We learn that Jamie knows about this bar because he had previously been there with Matthew. So we flash back a bit to show him with Matthew and Gio and the friends from the Pride Party, including Brian and Andrew. And we see an instance where Jamie inserts himself into the argument between these two boyfriends, between Brian and Andrew, because something about their relationship really triggers him.
Are you fucking kidding me? You think you're real pretty, so you can get away with whatever you want, but what you don't realize is that anyone who looks at you for more than a second knows how fucking ugly you are, and his boyfriend is in there.
This is something that has a huge plot point in season 3. Jamie's need to be an advocate, to step in and confront people, and that is something that we really see in season 3. But for this season, the reason it appears here is to show what is triggering Jamie. Why is Jamie triggered by this behavior? And it's because, as we learn a bit later from a walk with Matthew, after the explosion, after Jamie blows up at Brian, that Jamie sees a lot of himself in Brian, and Brian is very clearly, from anyone observed, the asshole in this. And so Jamie has, in his view of his prior relationship with Jared, has cast himself as the villain of that relationship because he was the person who wanted outside sex, and he may have flirted, as we see in the flashback at Dallas, flirted with people in front of Jared. And so he sees a despicable person exhibiting those same behaviors and identifies with them. By identifying with them and identifying with who he perceives as the villain, Jamie believes himself to be a bad person.
I'm Brian.
What are you talking about?
I'm Brian. Jared was the Andrew, and I see the way that Brian just discards Andrew, and it's me.
Matthew, sort of a substitute therapist, which is why Matthew appears in the same episode as the couples therapy to show a different sort of therapeutic exercise with Jamie that actually works with him and works for him, and has his best interest at heart, is Matthew explaining to him that you only ever really see one side of a story, and there aren't good people and there aren't bad people, there are just hurt people who behave in different ways.
You know there aren't good and bad people in a relationship, right? There are hurt people who act out in different ways. But the fact that you can see yourself in someone else's behavior and be open enough to learn from that, that's pretty rare. Listen, I've known these two a long time. Andrew is very manipulative emotionally, and Brian has some serious family and abandonment issues. Andrew likes to push those buttons to be in control. He's very superior himself. And Brian reacts with his best assets, his looks, so that he can feel desirable and not entirely inferior. You're not a bad person.
You're a terrible person.
However, as things are rarely that easy and simple and rarely ever tie up in a bow that way, we see Jamie in the final moments after his night out with Will. They share pizza, something that happens regularly and comes up again in season 3. This scene is also specifically referenced in season 3, so another one to revisit. We see that Will is still very much interested in exploring a romantic or sexual relationship with Jamie, and rather than shut it down, Jamie engages in it, still attempting to solidify friendships by using sex. All right, moving on to the second half of the season, we're on to episode 4, Saying Yes. This was dubbed the Friendship episode by Acting Hour, one of the many outlets that gave History some glowing reviews. Thank you very much, Acting Hour. Also choosing season 1 as a web series of the month during 2017, I believe. So this episode, we get a first flash of Jamie with his suitcase sitting outside somewhere on the street talking on the phone. It's an indication that we're finally going to learn about the move out during this episode, which has been so referenced throughout the season thus far. We flash to a post-breakup but pre-move out Jamie and Jared, of them discussing finding new apartments and really just handling the aftermath of deciding to split. And we get a hint of the relationship disparity between Jared and their friend group and Jamie and their friend group. And that is really planting the seed for the exploration of what Jamie values in a friendship throughout the rest of this episode. That exploration, what Jamie values in his relationships with people, is something that is explored far more in depth in season 3. We then get another flashback, still sticking with Jamie and Jared, where we now also learn about the existence of Dustin. So this is planting the seed not only in terms of, so we've got the move out storyline happening, but we also have we've seen in this flashback that they're still talking and they're still sort of figuring things out together and on friendly terms, so what made it sour? So this conversation, introducing the character of Dustin, someone that Jared dated or had relations with while they were on a break during their relationship out in Fire Island. This is someone that Jared has continued hanging out with, or has hung out with a couple times. He's coming clean to Jamie about this. Jamie doesn't really seem to be bothered by it, and in fact even suggests that maybe they can all get together for a threesome if that's something that Jared is actually interested in. But Jared seems cagey about it, and he's telling Jamie that they ran into each other mostly because someone else in their friend group saw it happen, and he's more trying to get in front of news or gossip. So with those sort of threads planted, we finally jump up to the present. Not long after Jamie and Will ended up hooking up after their night out together, trying to form a friendship and then ending up having a sexual relationship. They're out at brunch shortly thereafter, and they are avoiding the subject. Will is very nervous about what Jamie wants to talk about. Turns out that he's really just interested in planning a birthday celebration for Will.
Yeah?
Because Facebook tells me it's almost your birthday?
Oh, God.
You're not one of those people who hates his birthday, are you?
I just don't care.
Well, what are you doing? It's Saturday, right?
Yeah. No plans.
No plans. Will, we have to do something.
I just don't want to make it a big deal.
Your wishes are noted, completely disregarded. So you're gonna come over to my place at 8. We'll do a pregame. We'll go hit the bars. I'll invite Matthew. You can finally meet him, yeah?
We can go out, but seriously, nothing special.
Will, you only turned 41.
You're fat.
So with Will and Jamie deciding to just move on from it and never speak of it again, consider it a blip in their friendship formation rather than something that needs worked through, we get another flashback to explore relationships with the past friend group. And we see, it's a very pivotal scene in this episode and the season as a whole, the scene I like to call the magic of the city, where Michael, an old friend of Jamie's and current friend of Jared's, explains why Jamie shouldn't take people not responding or people canceling on plans not very seriously.
That's just New York, sweetie. That's just the way it is here. I mean, everyone has super busy lives. Plans change all the time. Fabulous things pop up unexpectedly at the last minute. I mean, that's what makes living here so wonderful. So you have to remain flexible, darling. It's just the magic of the city.
The magic of the city.
Of course. You cannot be taking this personally. I mean, just last night, Ellen and I were supposed to go to this gorgeous little wine bar because he and Daniel never showed up to my birthday dinner. He was a no-show. He texted me today, and it turns out he was invited to this really exclusive Fashion Week event out of nowhere. I mean, where does that just happen? And I wasn't upset about it, darling. Not last night. Not when he texted me today. It's just New York, babe. That's why I always carry a book.
And we see Dustin enter. Having planted the seed earlier, we now know a little bit about him, and Will and Jamie have a conversation about Dustin, and Jamie's a bit cagey on why he no longer speaks to anyone from the past. And that also, the cutting off, the shutting off people who have wronged him is something that is explored very heavily in season 3.
It's a breakup. I'm not naive. I knew I wasn't going to stay friends with everyone. I mean, I thought it would be easier because Jared and I broke up amicably, at least at first. I mean, there weren't any sides to take, but then there were sides to take, and they all just sort of broke off in waves.
So what happened?
Well, the first wave, let's just say they didn't have my best interests at heart, so I cut them out.
With Jamie being a bit cagey to Will of the specifics of what went on, we now flash back to a conversation that Jamie had with another one of his friends during the move out. He's very excited about his new apartment that's coming up. He seems to be in good spirits despite the breakup, that he's looking at as an opportunity to sort of strike out on his own. And it's revealed in the conversation that Dustin has sort of been hanging around with Jared whenever Jamie isn't around and around the friend group.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He told you all not to tell me. And you didn't. That's what you're telling me.
Look, I wasn't even there.
You know what? Well, tell me, Alan, who was?
We finally get moving day. So a little vignette of Jamie moving out of the apartment. The apartment's empty. He's taken his last bags and meeting his movers at the new apartment that he's been talking about and very excited about the whole episode, only to find that for unknown reasons the apartment is no longer available. So Jamie jumps quickly into action to try to figure out where to go and what to do. He's with his boxes and bags on the street. He doesn't know what his next steps are, and he calls every single one of his friends in order to ask for their help, to stay on their couch, to help him find a place, to bounce ideas off of, and each one of them sort of bats him away because they don't want to get involved. The montage really ends with a great scene between Jamie and Daniel, played by Miguel Lopez. I've worked with Miguel many times. He's a really great actor, a really great sport. He's helped behind the scenes a lot, actually. A lot of season 1, he actually helped with the camera work, and he often tells me that he really enjoyed playing this scene, especially the line about having to look at counting on your friends like a weather report, which is it was a fun back and forth that he and I get to explore and revisit in the new season.
This is what I don't get. If it were any of them, I would have just said yes and figured out the details later. Your friends just say yes, right?
We then come back to the present where Jamie is having drinks with Will. We're finally getting the joining of Will, Matthew, and Jamie all together as a cohesive friend group. To this point, Matthew and Will have been separate friends of Jamie's, so he's trying to force a relationship between all three of them so we can have a little, regular friend circle. Before Matthew arrives, they have a little conversation about Matthew's relationships, his other friendships, which Jamie is not a fan of, as we saw in the previous episode.
It's all about return on investment.
All right, calm down, finance.
Seriously. You find an attractive investment, then you invest and hope it pays off. If it doesn't, you cut your losses and make new investments.
All right, so how do I get Matthew to abandon his terrible investments?
Be a better one.
When Matthew arrives, Matthew is in full tilt weirdness. He's very Matthew during this entire exchange, which sort of puts Will off kilter. He doesn't really know how to take Matthew. They are very different people, so it's interesting to see how they sort of stumble around forming a relationship. The party continues to Therapy. Shout out to Therapy bar in New York City, one of the first gay bars I ever went to. I remember being in college looking up gay bars in New York City, knowing I was moving here, and being on Therapy's website and writing down the address and being excited to finally go. So it's a real thrill that the staff there has let us film there. So big shout out to Therapy, thank you. Thank you for always supporting us, not only this, but so many of our other productions. So we see the friends, the friend group really forging a relationship. They're having fun. Matthew, in a very Matthew way, is mischievous and decides for Will's birthday he's going to buy him a fedunk from a Go-Go Boy, which was really funny and fun to film. I remember Eddie, who played the Go-Go Boy, being very walking through the blocking and just having to be very clear that he was not actually going to take his dick out and flat well. You don't actually want me to do it, right? We had several conversations about that before we filmed it. And the sound effect that you hear when it happens, glamour of putting these things together is actually, I had bought a link of chorizo and slapped it against my hand in post and recorded that sound. So that's where that sound came from.
The Go-Go Boy has your present. Go tell him it's your birthday. I gave him a 20. Happy birthday!
So then we get a quick exchange between Will and Jamie, and it's a little moment, it's a little character moment between them, and it's such a small act of kindness that Will expresses. Just that tiny act of kindness, that small act of, I got this, I'll take care of this, means so much to Jamie.
I am so sorry. I promise I am totally good for it.
Hey, if you need something, ask. I'll just say yes.
They leave the bar. We get another appearance from Dog, Matthew's cat that we met in the last episode through a text message. This is really just solidifying the friendship that these three are now going to be a group. And when Matthew leaves, there's a slight resolution to the hookup that happened in the last episode.
Do you want me to walk you home?
Will, it's been a while since anyone's really given a shit about me. That means too much to me to fuck this up.
Fair enough. Dollar pizza?
Tell no one.
And that brings the episode to a close with the final flashback of, so Jamie, the three friends that we see here in the flashback are three that he hadn't fully sort of severed ties with. We've heard about other friends that he's severed ties with, but these three were still sort of hanging around. And he had plans with them in advance of the breakup that happened now in the present. He met up with them, went to a comedy show. We see them sort of snipe at each other, and just the real disparity between how he gets along with Will and Matthew versus how he gets along with these three. And he gets a little text message from his newly found friends, and it really just sinks in that he doesn't need to waste any more time on these people. And we get the sense
I'll just say yes.
that Jamie has now closed relationships with these people for good, and he is now on his way with his new friendships, and really taking a step forward with his new life and having the kind of relationships that he wants to have with the depth and the kindness and the compassion and the substance that he's always wanted. So that brings us to episode 5. Episode 5, we start with a flashback of Jamie and Jared yet again, hanging out with a friend referenced so far but not seen until now, Cooper. Cooper is that friend who is still very much dealing with his internalized homophobia. He's out, but he's very prized he very much prizes his masculinity, in his ability to assimilate into a group of straight men. That's something that he sees as a superior quality to Jamie, who he views as a silly queen. It's really starting to explore the way that toxic masculinity infects LGBT life, particularly specifically with gay men, how much the prize of the masculine really stratifies us in sort of a desirability ranking in a way that's quite ugly and unhelpful. We then meet Colin, who ends up playing a major role in season 2. Colin, Jamie is still dating. He's still going out regularly, still surfing the apps. He's converted Will into his best friend. He never ended up meeting with Ezra again. He's still hooking up with this total top character, though we're not sure. Well, we're actually not sure if he still is because of how he let him down in episode 2. But he's still dating, so we see him on a first date with Colin, someone that he really connects with in his interest. We get introduced to Jamie's interest in Star Trek. He's a big Star Trek fan. We're starting to really flesh out his personality and his quirks rather than just being sort of the representation of a slighted partner coming out of a breakup, being an archetype for a bitter, angry, gay ex, to actually fleshing out him as an individual. So we start to learn these things about him. We learn later in the episode that he loves learning music video choreography. We learn that he loves Star Trek. We just learn all of these quirky, strange things about Jamie that really develops during the show as he becomes more himself through his relationships with other people. His friendships with Matthew and Will, and his forming his life in a way that feels him to be more authentic to himself rather than present the front that the Jamie-Jared couple had presented. Allowing himself to be himself is starting to flesh out in the show as well. He goes straight from that date to meet up with Will and Matthew on the street. He has plans to go to a RuPaul viewing party, something that an event that he is now regularly attending. And the use of RuPaul's Drag Race is intentional. One, to show another interest of Jamie's that's sort of blossoming and we're getting to know, but also because that is certainly something that in Jamie's previous friend group would not have been something to be celebrated. It would have been seen as too femme or too gay. And the idea of anything being too gay or not masculine enough is sort of the centerpiece of this episode. So we're building up to finally addressing the issue. They talk about Colin in a way that's also interesting. It's something that Jamie is very tied up in, which is sexual roles with gay men in their sexual roles of being either a top or a bottom. He is very gendered almost in his view of that the bottom is sort of the woman in the relationship and the top is the man in the relationship. And it's a paradigm that he has incorporated into his life, and that's sort of the prism in which he views when he dates someone, of whether, are we two men here or are we a man and a woman here? And combining that view, which I think gay men start with, and slowly as they become more themselves and they get older, they abandon the idea that someone in the relationship is a man and someone in the relationship is a woman. So combining that exploration of how he views romantic partnership in gay life with sort of the masculine and feminine norms, it's all similar in theme, and it's all coming to a head. So it comes here in that Jamie doesn't think there's a future with Colin because they're probably both bottoms. So we finally get to the RuPaul viewing party. We meet Ted. So Ted is a new friend that Jamie has met at some point during this time, and we learn later that it was again through dating that he has made all of his major friendships, with the exception of Matthew, by converting dates into friends. That's something that he's going to try to do with Colin in season 2, and for the first time it's really not going to go well. And leaving the party, we really hit the climax of the episode, the inciting incident that sets forward the real discussion of the issues presented, which is that Will, on his profile on a dating app, has said that he's only interested in masculine people.
I'm allowed to have preferences.
Listen, do I see myself dating someone who wears makeup and has a man purse? No, I don't. But I also don't contribute to the idea that we should be judged based on how much we fit in with straight people.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mask only. So what? Straight acting based on how masculine someone is?
I don't want to date someone who's super gay.
So there's such a thing as being too gay.
And that's bad. Being recognizably gay is bad. How much gay is acceptable, Will?
We move on to a second date with Colin. Despite the fact that Jamie was not sure things were going to work out, he still very much likes Colin in the same way that he very much liked Will and likes Will. And the relationship between Jamie and Colin is really, and especially in season 2, is explored as had Jamie done the wrong thing with Will, how would that have turned out?
Sorry.
About what?
My performance?
It was great. Like really great.
You certainly shot everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, no. Never apologize for that. I didn't. I think it's because I'm usually in your position.
Really?
Yeah, I only moonlight as a top. On a harvest moon.
We move forward to the real discussion of the issues presented in the episode, which is the conversation between Ted and Jamie, where Ted basically tells Jamie that his ideas of tops and bottoms, and you need one of each in a relationship, and someone has to be the man and someone has to be the woman, at least in the sexual aspect of a relationship, is inherently gendered and a load of shit, and that Jamie needs to abandon it. And they explore why he, and hopefully for the audience, why people who have these views might have them.
You still see your sexuality the way straight people do. You see one of you as the woman and one of you as the man. But that shit doesn't apply to us.
No, it's about sexual satisfaction. It's plain and simple.
Is it? Or is it the fact that you've decided a role you want to play? A role based on the only relationship you saw growing up. And of the two, you gravitated toward the woman. No one is the woman. Stop putting us in their limited constructs.
Jamie has a little text message exchange with Ted, which really solidifies what he should do about Colin. We understand that Jamie's going to break up with Colin because he's just leading him on, even though Jamie's views of sort of top and bottoms in a relationship is quite limited. It's something that he's still working on, and so he shouldn't drag Colin along while he's still working on this. We finally get the reveal that, Jamie and Ted had a bit of a relationship, and that Jamie ended it because Ted was too feminine. So it's really calling Jamie out on his shit. Jamie's very quick to judge other people for not being involved in these issues, and Ted is really throwing it back of like, well, you've got some work to do too. We get the impression that Jamie is going to break up with Colin, and then we finally move to the resolution between the friend group at the gym.
I am probably less gay now than I used to be. I'm like a rainbow sock that's been in the wash for 30 years. I've lost some of my color.
There are no real grand apologies. There's no real grand resolution. It's yet again Will and Jamie just sort of doing what I think most people do in situations like this, where you just agree to move past it. So we see that the friendships are repaired and everyone's fine and we're all going to move on. And it ends in the final scene, which is the group of friends. We get another appearance from Gio, who we saw in episode 3. We've got Ted, we've got Will, Matthew, Bianca. This is now, we started last episode, we've got the triad at the center of sort of Jamie's friend group, and now we've got the extended friends. And this is really the group of people that Jamie wants to surround himself with. They're people that are dissimilar in a lot of ways, but because of their inner kindness, they are drawn to each other.
You know the dances to what now? Okay, well, I know like single ladies.
We are going to show some autography to these hookers. All right, I need a third single lady.
Teach me a little.
Really? Not too gay for you?
And what's wrong with that?
So we're finally at the season finale of season 1. One of our most widely acclaimed episodes. received the Best Screenplay nomination from the Toronto Web Fest. This is really it's the grand finale of the season, and it really closes most of the issues from the season. So to date, we saw a very bitter, angry Jamie who felt very alone and very isolated, coming out of the relationship, dealing with a bunch of shit, feeling like no one was in his corner, feeling very alone. And we've watched him slowly form friendships and relationships that mean things to him, and cut off relationships that he's seen to be as toxic, becoming more himself, being challenged on sort of his dated views of things that he's going to be challenged by with his friends, particularly Ted. We see him become more himself. We see him become happier. We see that sort of his circle and his life is now baked and set. So the big remaining, we've seen the move out. We've seen the reason that he doesn't talk to Jared anymore. We now really know what's going on, with the exception of one final thing: closure with Jared. So letting go, the episode is showing how, though Jamie has moved on and taken these appreciable steps, has the new place, has the new friends, doesn't really feel much ties to his old life anymore, he still hasn't let it go. And he hasn't let it go because, and as Ted points out later in the episode, he is still holding up his old life and his old way of doing things and his old friend groups as a comparison to how he does things now. He constantly references it, pulls it, holds it up in order to make different choices, which is part of his moving on and part of his establishing a new life. But until he throws that away and just focuses on the present and the things he has now, he hasn't truly moved on. He needs to let it go and stop comparing everything he does to the way he used to do things. The way that the episode was written, very different from all of the other episodes. Rather than a series of flashbacks, this episode is focused on tapping the resources that Jamie has now built in his friends. He has a very diverse and interesting group of friends that have different views on things. So in the situation that Jamie's about to enter into, we see him call each one of those friends, and in little vignettes, each of them gets a feature to sort of show their take on the perspective, their take on the situation. And each one of them is very different. They come at it from a different point of view. And it really shows the value that JD places in his friends, that each one of them brings a unique perspective, and he trusts each one of them to be honest with him and be kind and compassionate when has these, intense emotional sort of moments. And it's showing how each one of them is there for him, but in different ways, and how he can think about the situation in different ways. So what is the situation? Well, at the very beginning, we see that Bianca, something that's been referenced, is moving away. She's always wanted to live in Texas, so she's moving to Texas, and Jamie is seeing her off at the train station. He himself is going home for the holidays, and it turns out that he and Jared are going to be on the same train, and in fact end up on the same car. So you've got two people that were boyfriends for 5 years, had a nasty breakup, which we've yet to see until the end of this episode, now isolated together in a train car. Jamie is feeling his feelings and calls Bianca as soon as he gets on the train. Hasn't responded yet. She's still getting herself on her way, and he really stews in his feelings. He calls Catherine. So Catherine's really our first phone a friend. This is the phone a friend episode.
Think of everything you've been through. And in the end, you won. The best revenge is a life well lived. And you are living well, Jameson.
So Jamie's view of the breakup, what he thought would happen is that sort of they would split, their life would separate a bit, and they'd each sort of keep pieces of the old life and form circles and form, you know, their new lives around it. They'd still kind of be connected, they'd still operate in the same circles, but there'd sort of be an even split. And Jamie is feeling like there was no even split, that Jared basically just kicked Jamie out of his own life. We see that in this first vignette with, you know, the things he wants to keep. Jared even wants to take a lamp that was a housewarming gift from Jamie's mother. And it's a plot point that's just showing that it's meant to illustrate that Jared really just wants everything to remain the same for him. The only thing he wants out is Jamie. We're back on the train, and we finally see the moment that was referenced in the first episode, the reason that Catherine flew to New York to be with Jamie and to see how he was doing. This is the phone call that he made to Catherine while he was sort of figuring out his moving situation. We saw in the last episode, 2 episodes ago, that he lost the new apartment. Here he is, you know, thinking about taking this new apartment, which is not as nice as the one that he was supposed to have, that is not as nice as the one that Jared lives in, and he's really just feeling as if he lost.
So he gets everything.
Oh, honey.
He gets everything.
We then get Matthew and Gio, who Jamie calls to get their perspective on it, and we also see a flashback of the actual when Jared left the apartment. So we saw when Jamie left the apartment, he was the last one to go. We see Jared leaving, and we see the sort of what we assume was a lack of closure. That it's the reason that Jamie is stewing on the train, because the last thing they said to each other was just see you later. And there was no moment of sort of, there was no closure. So that is why Jamie is, we assume, at this point in the episode, stewing, because he didn't get to say everything he needed to say.
So my movers are coming tonight. Cool. Yeah, it'll be nice to get some space for a bit.
It will.
All right. I'll see you later.
See you later.
We leave Matthew and Gio after they give Jamie their perspective, and we're now back at therapy where Ted is eating a cake with his hands at a bar, living his best life. Nice little cameo here. The bartender is my brother, Jordan Tracy, who helped me film. He was staying with me this summer, and he helped me, the summer that we filmed this, and he helped me film the whole thing. A lot of this camera work, if it wasn't Miguel, actually Trent, who plays Ted, did a lot of the camera work as well. If it wasn't the two of them, it was Jordan. I wanted to get him on camera a little bit.
I think you should just leave it alone. Listen, it was 5 years. You obviously had something with it. He was a good companion for a time, but it ended. And from what I gathered, he was unkind. He is an unkind person. Jamie, we do not have time for unkind people. We're better than that.
Finally, we get to Will, Jamie's best friend, the heart of the series. And it's to Will that Jamie actually confesses the reveal of this episode, which is there was a moment of closure. Something that he hasn't told anyone about, his final words to Jared that he actually did get to say after the move out. It happened, as we're seeing from the timeline, at some point during probably episodes 1 and 2, or actually between 2 and 3, because in episode 2, we saw that that there was still this money situation that was still hanging over their heads, that was still connecting Jamie and Jared. Jamie apparently still owed Jared some money, so that was still, and Jamie was not speaking to Jared, so it was sort of this this thread that was still there between them. And we see that in the breakup that Jamie the conversation that Jamie confesses having with Jared when he delivers the check to finally end all ties, and he tells Jared exactly why he just feels so slighted and pushed aside. He had thought they were going to remain friends, and just the way that Jared has handled the breakup has made him feel so shitty that he couldn't possibly continue having any sort of relationship with Jared because of the way that he handled it.
We opened the relationship for me. We went to therapy for you. None of it worked. And you must have realized that too, because you replaced me before I fucking left. Yeah, I know.
We come back after the reveal and Jamie's final words and him expressing all the things he was feeling through it, to Will letting him know why it is, he still is having this swell of emotions on the train by seeing Jared even after that. All the other friends have said you just haven't had closure because you left things sort of open-ended. He reveals to Will, no, he didn't. He actually had what he considers to be a very embarrassing breakdown on the street with Jared. And so, if he's had his closure, so why is he still feeling this way? And it's because, as Will points out, it's not that he didn't get closure, it's that he feels he wasn't heard. That it didn't have any effect on Jared. Now, he can't know that. So he doesn't know if it had any impact on him, but in his perception, all of it was for nothing. And all he wanted, and what he's missing from all of this, why he still feels this way, is he wanted Jared to feel something about the breakup. He wanted him to be sad. He wanted it to be difficult for him. He wanted it to, because if not, then did their relationship mean anything at all?
All right, so tell me, if I got my closure, why am I still angry?
Because you just wanted him to see you, Jamie. And he didn't.
So finally, Bianca returns the phone call after she gets situated on her way. She lets him know that that's not something that he needs to move on. That he can't find his happiness, his moving on, he can't find what he's looking for in someone else, in getting a reaction from Jared. He just has to closure is internal. It's not something you're going to get from the other person. It's something that you're going to give yourself. And she reminds him of something he just said to her before she left.
You're gonna have to build a life for yourself. And it's not easy. It's fucking scary. And it can make you feel very, very lonely. You're gonna feel a lot of the vacancy in your life until you feel it, and probably still thereafter. But B, it is so satisfying when you do fill it with the right people.
That really hits Jamie and connects with him, and we see at the very end of the episode, the moment presents itself for Jamie and Jared to have additional words, and Jamie decides not try to impact him anymore, to not try to find what he's looking for by having another conversation, altercation, confrontation with Jared. He decides he's just gonna focus on being happy, and in this moment, as he steps off the train, he finally lets go.
Just go be happy.
That's the end of season 1. We'll be back at you very soon for a full season recap of season 2. Of course, feel free to watch the playlist of all the episodes, whether you've seen them before, whether watching this has made you interested to see them. Go ahead and catch up. You got time before season 3 drops. Final thoughts about season 1. I wrote season 1 as a sort of an angry diary entry. It incorporated a lot of things from my own breakup at the time. I put the script away for for well over a year. At the time, I was really just writing. I wasn't thinking about producing anything. I wasn't thinking about creating. And when I finally decided to make room in my life to start actually producing my own projects, I pulled those scripts out and wondered whether I could make them into something that would be well received. And it was that first conversation with the actor who plays Will, the actor who plays Ted, the original Jared, who had left the production, and myself, that the four of us decided that we could figure it out, that we could pull it together. And along the way, met Jacob, Misha, who would play a big role in season 2. Really just pulled together so many resources, and I'm just very proud that this was my first thing, and that it was so beautifully reviewed, and that we've met so many fans and so many people that this connected with. So many letters of people who were moved by the show, and that's really the best part of doing this, just knowing that the things that I write, which come from they're all very personal, so knowing that they connect with people is really the best part of all of this. So thank you. Go ahead and refresh yourselves on the episodes. Stand by for a season 2 recap, and of course, season 3, February 14th, Valentine's Day, we find out what is love for Jamie, Will, and Matthew. And to get season 3, best way is to subscribe. So make sure you subscribe, necessary outlet on